How Idi Amin got away with murder in the Turkana Massacre. Introduction. The Turkana Massacre of 1976 remains one of the most tragic and overlooked atrocities in East African history. Orchestrated by Uganda's then-president, Idi Amin Dada, the massacre resulted in the deaths of at least 30 Kenyan civilians along the Kenya-Uganda border. Despite its gravity, Amin managed to evade accountability, and the incident never led to significant repercussions for his regime. This article explores the events leading to the massacre, Amin's motivations, Kenya's response, and the broader implications of this historical event. Background. Amin's expansionist agenda. Idi Amin, who seized power in Uganda through a military coup in 1971, was notorious for his brutality and erratic leadership. His ambitions extended beyond Uganda's borders, and he often made territorial claims on neighboring countries, particularly Kenya. Amin insisted that parts of Turkana, Nzoia, and Uasin Gishu rightfully belonged to Uganda, a claim that created diplomatic tensions between the two nations. The Turkana region, inhabited by the nomadic Turkana people, was particularly vulnerable to external aggression. The porous border made it easy for Ugandan forces to conduct incursions into Kenya, and the region's remoteness meant that any attacks could occur with minimal immediate consequences. The massacre was the culmination of Amin's aggression, driven by his desire to expand Uganda's influence and his increasing disregard for diplomatic norms. The Turkana Massacre, a brutal attack in January 1976, Ugandan soldiers, under orders from Amin, crossed into Kenya and attacked civilians in the Lokichogio area of Turkana County. The assault was unprovoked, targeting unarmed Kenyan villagers, including women and children. Survivors recounted the horrors of the attack, describing how the soldiers indiscriminately shot at civilians, looted livestock, and set villages on fire. The primary motive behind the attack was to instill fear and assert dominance over the contested border region. Amin viewed the Turkana people as an obstacle to his expansionist ambitions, and by orchestrating such a massacre, he sought to weaken Kenyan resolve in defending its territorial integrity. The massacre sparked outrage in Kenya, with politicians and citizens demanding immediate action. However, the response from the Kenyan government was muted and cautious, reflecting the complex geopolitical realities of the time. Kenya's response: diplomatic restraint. Over retaliation despite the brutal attack, Kenya, led by President Jomo Kenyatta, opted for a diplomatic rather than a military response. Several factors contributed to this approach. Avoiding full-scale war, engaging in an open conflict with Uganda could have escalated tensions across East Africa, drawing in other regional players and disrupting trade and security. Alliances. Internal stability concerns. Kenya was undergoing its own internal challenges, including political rivalries and economic issues. A war with Uganda would have placed additional strain on the country's resources. Amin's unpredictability. Idi Amin was known for his erratic decisions and violent retributions. Kenya feared that retaliating militarily could provoke further aggression from Uganda. Instead of military action, Kenya pursued diplomatic measures, lodging official complaints with the Organization of African Unity, OAU, and the United Nations. However, international bodies failed to take decisive action against Amin, further emboldening his regime. Why Amin faced no consequences. Idi Amin's ability to evade justice for the Turkana massacre can be attributed to several key factors. International indifference. During the 1970s, global attention was focused on the Cold War, apartheid in South Africa, and conflicts in the Middle East. The atrocities committed by African dictators, including Amin, were often overlooked or met with limited diplomatic pressure. Weak regional cooperation. The East African Community, EAC, was struggling with internal divisions during this period. Tanzania and Uganda had growing hostilities, but Kenya sought to maintain neutrality. This lack of regional unity meant that there was no collective effort to hold Amin accountable. Fear of retaliation. Amin had demonstrated his willingness to carry out brutal retaliatory actions. His unpredictable nature made neighboring countries hesitant to engage him directly. Kenya, prioritizing internal stability, opted to avoid confrontation. Amin's short-lived rule. By 1979, Idi Amin's regime collapsed when Tanzanian forces alongside Ugandan exiles overthrew him. His removal from power overshadowed past atrocities, including the Turkana Massacre. He fled into exile in Saudi Arabia, where he lived until his death in 2003, escaping trial for his numerous crimes. Ethiopia ranks 5th, maintaining 162,000 active personnel with no formal reserves. Its $0.5 billion budget funds 680 tanks and 24 fighter aircraft, including Su-27s, with UAE-supplied Kaleidos MC-AV-20 vehicles added in 2024. Ethiopia's population of 116 million provides significant manpower potential, though internal conflicts such as the Tigray War since 2020 challenge unity. Its military has a storied history of resisting external threats, now focused on stabilizing the Horn of Africa amid tensions with Sudan. Ethiopia's combat experience and modest but effective arsenal make it a key regional player despite economics constraints. South Africa ranks 4th with 73,000 active personnel and 15,000 reservists, totaling 88,000. Its $3.2 billion budget supports 195 tanks, 17 Gripen fighter jets, and 47 naval assets, including 4 frigates. South Africa's defense industry exports equipment worth over $200 million annually, showcasing advanced manufacturing. However, budget cuts in 2024 have reduced its capacity, dropping it from a higher rank. The military excels in peacekeeping, notably in UN missions in the DRC, leveraging skilled personnel. South Africa's strategic focus balances regional leadership with economic challenges, maintaining a capable but constrained force. Nigeria holds 3rd place with 230,000 active personnel and 50,000 paramilitary forces, totaling 280,000 and no reserves. Its $2.5 billion budget, supported by oil wealth, funds 253 tanks, 21 fighter aircraft like JF-17 Thunder, and 100 naval patrol craft. Nigeria's population of over 230 million yields 4.15 million annually reaching military age, ranking 6th. Globally, in manpower potential, the military combats Boko Haram insurgency and Gulf of Guinea piracy, making it West Africa's dominant force. Nigeria's growing investment in equipment and large troop base signal its rising regional influence. Algeria ranks 2nd with 325,000 active personnel, 135,000 reservists, and 150,000 paramilitary forces, totaling 610,000. Its $21.6 billion defense budget, the continent's highest, funds 1,632 tanks, 103 fighter aircraft like Su-30s, and 51 naval vessels, including 6 submarines. Oil revenues drive this spending, with recent acquisitions like the Russian Iskander-E missile system enhancing its technological edge. Algeria focuses on border security and counter-terrorism, particularly against al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, solidifying its North African dominance. Its large, well-equipped force underscores its strategic importance. Egypt leads Africa with 440,000 active personnel, 480,000 reservists and 300,000 paramilitary forces, totaling 1.22 million. its $9.4 billion budget plus $185 billion in U.S. aid supports 5,083 tanks, 215 fighter aircraft, and 91 naval assets, including 2 Mistral-class helicopter carriers. Egypt's military modernizes through U.S. partnerships, maintaining a robust arsenal. It addresses Sinai Peninsula insurgency and secures the Suez Canal, a global trade artery. Egypt's manpower, funding, and equipment make it Africa's strongest military, with significant regional and international influence. Analysis and insights Africa's top armies showcase a blend of manpower, economic power, and strategic focus. Egypt and Algeria lead with large budgets and advanced equipment, while Nigeria and South Africa leverage population and industry. Ethiopia and Angola rely on combat experience and resources, respectively. Morocco's alliances, the DRC's potential, Sudan's resilience, and Tunisia's discipline complete the list. Economic stability and leadership adaptability amplify these forces, though internal conflicts often limit their potential. Conclusion: in 2025, Africa's top armies, led by Egypt, reflect diverse strengths in troop numbers, technology, and strategic roles. Economic powerhouses like Algeria and conflict-tested nations like Ethiopia highlight the continent's military complexity. Strategic leadership and resource management remain key to elevating these forces, aligning them with global standards.